Well, Kim Chekanetsa speaking there, and she's in the studio alongside me now. Also with Barry Andrews, the Chief Executive of the charity Goal, who has just returned from Sierra Leone. Barry, the projections get more alarming by the day. What were conditions like for you in Freetown?
Yes, the projections have got dramatically worse, and the outside projection now, based on current trajectories, is 1.4 million cases in a worst-case scenario. But the scene that we saw in Freetown was very disturbing. The health workers, both local and expat, are having to work in, quite frankly, absolutely unacceptable conditions. The patients are having to endure tragedies on a daily basis, and it defies all human instinct for families that they have to not see their children again and bring them into hospitals in circumstances where, you know, all of your human instincts are to care for them, to do the things that we're trying to help people not to do.
What is the difference between quarantine and lockdown, and is that the way forward, do you think?
Well, a quarantine is very draconian. The lockdown itself over the 3 days of last weekend was not as draconian as that. I would be of the view that the objectives against which the lockdown could be assessed were very modest. They were about sensitizing the population to the seriousness of Ebola, to the fact that it is dangerous. So some of those objectives were achieved, but I don't believe that a quarantine is going to work. I believe it's very dangerous. It could lead to a large-scale reaction among the public, because there is a disconnect between the authorities and the public, and there's a potential for that to be fractured.
Kim, your programme Essential in Getting Information Out to People. What are you hearing in terms of the cultural problems which are perpetuating the spread of this disease, and how difficult is it to convince people that what they've done for centuries in terms of their traditions must be changed?
Well, I think if you take the example in Guinea, where people have been eating bushmeat for a very long time, and to suddenly come and disrupt that cultural practice, or burial practices, for example, which are very important to people. In the south of Guinea, people, when someone dies, you can't touch the body for 7 days, and then there's a special designated person who has to deal with the body. So if health workers are coming in and, you know, spraying the body and covering it in plastic, you can understand that there'll be people will be unhappy about that, because they'll feel that it's disrupting cultural
Well, one story
norms.
I heard also, apparently there was an Islamic scholar who died, his body was washed, and then the water was used to wash the children there, because they were told that the knowledge of this wise man would then be spread around them. I mean, are you addressing cases like that?
Well, I guess what we're trying to do in our programme is bring the most up-to-date information and also bring some context to things. Because, for example, I can give is just on Tuesday we had the CDC giving these projections. This is the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, saying up to 1.4 million people might, you know, contract the disease if it goes unchecked by late January. You need to bring context to that, because if I was sitting in Conakry and I heard these statistics, I would feel quite alarmed. So the programme is trying to synthesize this information, because there's a lot of information coming through, and give some context and advice. I mean, it's not, you know, through the World Health Organization, give the best advice we're hearing.
And also the danger, not only in terms of contracting Ebola, but the danger physically in terms of threats for people working over there as well.
Yeah, we've seen a number of incidents over the last few days. There is the health risk of working as an aid worker in these contexts, but also the security issues, and that is because of the interface between the description there of the cultural norms in West Africa, confronted by what is the best advice for how to contain the transmission of the illness. So Goal, for example, is training the police authorities in Freetown. We're also training health workers to protect themselves and also to treat patients with dignity and treat families with dignity, and that's a critical part of it. But ultimately, what these countries need is medical workers. They need funding. Goal itself has launched an emergency recruitment drive, which we hope to be able to use in order to scale up our response over the next few weeks.
Kim, how frightened are people?
I think there is fear is a common theme. You're hearing from people both in the countries, and you're hearing also other people who can't go back home, for example. In our show, we heard from a Liberian student whose family are in Liberia, and he's based in Kenya studying there, and he was just talking about how they could not attend his graduation because flights have been cancelled, and he was telling us about the fear that his family felt there in Liberia.
Okay. Kim Chekanet and Barry Andrews from Gold, thank you both very much for joining us on the programme.